Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our panel on Industrial Revolution 4.0, the effects on European societies, or the social effects. We have been talking about Industry 4.0 now for many, many years, for ages. I spoke to Hilary about it yesterday, and it's the last 4 or 5 years, it's still turning around. Robotization, automation, interaction between machines and other machines, borderless data flows, many other things, innovations, and what happens with innovations, influences on jobs. We have many strategies on Industry 4.0, Industrial Revolution or Industry 4.0. We have strategy from position papers from the industry. We have position papers from the trade unions. We have basically many things. What we would do today with our panel, we would like to look at a number of issues that basically relate to this question. We'll be looking at the role of the governments, the good one, the bad one, and what is the governance. Education and skill revolution, extremely important, and I think education is one of the keys. New business models. The Industry 4.0, however defined, is going to necessitate to develop new business models. There will be a shift in HR decision makings. And we have here an HR specialist on the panel. Digital inclusion and exclusion. Everybody talks about it. Let's look at it as well. Trust, leadership, extremely important question. Startups, how does it influence startups, and what does it do to starting new businesses? Last but not least, we will be also talking a little bit, because we have here somebody who has been doing a lot about automotive industry, about the automotive industry, self-driving cars, and that's a very good typical example on this issue. So let me introduce you our panelists. I would like to remind you that you can use the Slido. The questions will appear on the monitor, and I will see them. So when we finish the presentations of each of the panelists, they will have 5 minutes to present their cases and to make their presentation. We will then have a discussion among us, and then we will open it to the audience. You can both use the Slido. You can also, there'll be a walking mic, so you can ask questions if you are not able to use the Slido. So let me quickly introduce the panelists. Kalle, member of the Estonian Parliament since 2007, one of the youngest member when you came there, and also a member in dealing with number of EU institutions. And last but not least, Kalle has been involved in preparing, in fact, the first legislation on that regulates ride-sharing companies like Uber. I understand that it's very recent, and if anybody has any questions on it, I'm sure that Kalle is going to be is willing to do that. Next to Kalle is sitting Jaroslava Rezlerová, or Jarka, who is managing director in Manpower. She is dealing with employment, development opportunities, innovative workforce. We call them headhunters. So what will be the role in this new world of the people who search for the right skills, or people with the right skills, etc. Sutcliffe Hilary. Hilary is sitting next to you, is a director of SocietyInside, and it is it's not a think tank. You say that you are a think tank, you are a strategic advisor, you're innovator, you are basically all of that. And you have recently been in the United States at a similar conference, so I'm sure that we will hear about your experience, and Hilary is also a co-chair of the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on Values, Ethics and Innovation. So welcome. Peter Varga. Peter is CEO of Lafluence, and Lafluence is it's a startup, and it's now helping startups. So let's see how the data flows and everything that you have today helps the startups and how you came to put together the Lafluence. And he is, of course, not of course, but he has been in the past working for Google, if I understand well.
Yes.
And last but not least, Adela Zábražná, a former absolvent or alumni of Aspen Institute Young Leaders Program. She has been with us a year ago. She is executive manager of Slovak Alliance for the Innovative Economy, which is SAPI. And it is the largest innovation hub alliance, if I understand, in Slovakia. But as we have discussed before, you are still not very happy that Slovakia is in the third group of the innovators among the European countries. So, without a further ado, we will go in order from the left to the right. And Kalle, the word is yours. Please stick to the 5 minutes, and then we will open it to the floor.
Thank you. I think it doesn't take so long. So I mean, if we talk about the Industry 4.0 and all the revolution which is happening at the moment, we should always remind us that where are we located. So this is European Union. At the same time, China is still developing with a really high speed. It used to be the United States that were leading in the technology industry and in the IT industry. So currently, let's say, at the moment where European Union is still 28, 27 member states with all, let's say, these fractions in different member states and different understanding what the Industry 4.0 is, then it's just better that we understand what is the framework. But overall, I would let's say underline the most important part in this revolution, and this is education. So we must redefine education and the education system. It's estimated that 80% of the future workforce will be trained locally in the industries. So basically, we don't need this professional training schools. We don't need universities as in the way that we understand universities nowadays. And it puts really high pressure to the universities itself. They have to redefine themselves. So what will be their role in the future in the societies? And then this is extremely challenging. It has been even said that we should put an expiration date for the higher education, so that you'll need to upskill yourself in every 5 or 10 years, because the technology changes so fast. It's said that during the next 5 years, technology will change as much it has changed during the last 100 years. So let's estimate that we'll still have this traditional universities and higher education system, and you'll spend 5 years in the university. So compared to the speed of the development of technology, you'll spend 100 years in the university, and it's a total waste of time. So as we have accelerators for the startups, where you basically get the 3 years knowledge during maybe 2 months, very specifically, we should have the same system in the higher education and in the education system overall. So basically, bring the let's say education that gives basic skills to the maybe 6th, 7th grade already. Start teaching ICT and robotics already in kindergarten, which is let's say something that we pilot in Estonia. And programming already in the 6th grade. So basically, I mean, this is so much faster in the future, and this is the most important challenge that all the politicians and decision makers have to focus on. Not about, I mean, the specific industry. Will there be a automotive industry in the Slovakia in 10 years? It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that are people ready to change their mindset, and are they ready to upskill whatever the situation in the future will be? I think that's enough for the start.
Thank you very much. Expiration date of skills, 5 years, 6 years, 2 years. How would it work?
Yes,
from
me. Okay. I mean, it's an overall crazy idea. I mean, if I would say it publicly as a politician in Estonia, then probably nobody would vote for me. But I mean, if I try to remember what I learned in the university, besides teamwork, which is extremely important and probably the only important thing that we can bring with us to the future, because the knowledge is changing so much. But I think that you'll have to. We can do it either this way, that in every 10 years you'll have to pass some very accelerative course, like you go to an accelerator with a startup, like I mentioned before, or we lose the universities in a way that we know them. So basically, after secondary school, you go to an university and you'll spend the whole life there, meaning you'll spend maybe 2 days, 1 weekend per month in learning something very specific connected to your current work job, and it will be organized in cooperation with the employer.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. Jaroslava, you are not far away from that. I have seen your body language. You have agreed with lots of the things Kalle was saying.
Sure.
Your take.
Thank you. I have to just say something about my profession, because maybe I am not so much of headhunter.
It was just a...
Yeah, I know. We are on a labor market, employing people, because the main core business we are doing is temporary workforce. So I'm dealing much more with low-skilled people, which are not going to universities, but actually they are having the same issue today, because the automatization, robots, artificial intelligence, it's the period we are living in just now. It's not the future. Future is there already, and we see it everywhere. ManpowerGroup employs in the Czech Republic and Slovakia, I'm responsible for 2 countries, 12,000 people. So I can say we have a lot of experiences about how the current business models are being disrupted with quickly developing technologies, with changes in robotics in systems, with fast-moving population, with aging generation and new generation coming from the schools to the labor place and not having the intention to work as the previous generation were working. So all those is changing fast the situation in the market than we can imagine. We are living it right now. So what I see today in my everyday job is that companies, especially industrial companies, are ready to solve the situation, help people to reskill, upskill, etc. I don't see the societies in the European Union doing something really important about it. We are talking about it, but so far I didn't see any program, any system in place which should help people and then companies to be much more in line with new requirements of the world of work. So that's probably enough for my introduction. Ivan?
How is it going to change your job? How is it going to change the job of the, excuse me to use the expression, but it's probably the most understandable, the headhunters?
It did already, actually.
Sorry?
It did change it. It started already.
Yes.
Actually, what we have to do is invest to people reskilling and learning to be able to place them in the jobs, as the employers are looking for much more different skill than they did 10, 5, even 3 years ago. So we are investing into the trainings. We are building up academies, training centers to support people to be able to develop their learnability, adoption rate, etc., to be able to find a suitable job. And maybe there is one thing I would like to underline, which is related to this automatization of industrial economy, of industry and economy. There are a lot of discussions about how this will impact the population in the very short period of time, in 2-3 years, as big part of the production will be replaced by robots. And it's happening already now. In some big plants of production, it is happening. So we performed, as ManpowerGroup, worldwide research, asking 20,000 employers worldwide what they are thinking about their future workforce, how the automatization will impact the future workforce in next 2-3 years. And 87% of employers said us that there will be increasing number of jobs they will need to have in their production plants. Because robots will do the job which is not like interesting, which is repetitive, which is difficult, which is physically very demanding. But around you will have to have much more people to keep robots going, to repair them, to maintain them, etc., etc. So this is very, like I would say, easy example to show how the skills will change in the very near future.
Thank you very much. Hilary.
Okay, so for me, I work across technologies, so nanotech, biotech, AI, robotics. I was even on the quantum tech public dialogue in the UK the other day. So this question, what will be the societal effect of the fourth IR? I mean, it's sort of a bit of a dumb question. It sort of depends. It depends where you are where you are in society, where you are in the EU. It's very different from Estonia, from Spain, from the UK to the Czech Republic. So I think one of the things that we're finding is that there are going to be different tracks and different levels and different responses. And seeing that in the US last week, particularly in the governance of things, individual cities taking their own track and sort of embracing or not embracing, depending on the needs of their individual city and society. So I think that's something that Europe will have to deal with as well, different needs for different areas. But what also I see is a sort of this slight feeling of powerlessness, like, oh my God. And I like the quote from Paul Romer, the 2018 Nobel Prize-winning economist, who said, "Tech is not like weather. It doesn't just happen to us. It's actually something, if we collectively set our minds to it, we direct tech and improve it in a direction that seems important to us and at a faster rate." But for me, sort of what collectively set our minds is one thing, and in what direction. And one of the things I see a lot of is the starting with the tech, instead of starting with the purpose that the tech will solve. So let's not start with the tech, but let's maybe start with our collective European values, so human dignity and human rights, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. How does tech interact with that? Because it's not going so great at the moment, when even basic data analytics is biasing people and discriminating against people getting loans, applying for jobs, computer chips monitoring workers' movements and making them into robots, facial recognition, even in London, being used inappropriately, perhaps for policing, because somebody sold them this great idea that they're going to solve all the problems of the world with some tech. So again, I think we have more ability to shape technology than it perhaps feels like. But going back to this rule of law concept as well, which I know I've heard a lot about today, that one of the projects I'm doing is looking at how can society trust the tech, but also trust the governance. Because at the end of the day, this tech is going to happen in various different ways. And as citizens, I think a lot of people are worried mainly that someone is on the case to govern this stuff, that the laws, the regulations, the general, both as a constraint and as a catalyst. So not, governance is not there just to sort of hem everything in and constrain it. It's there to facilitate innovation as well. So I'm running this other World Economic Forum project on trust in governance and asking, how can we have governance that's trustworthy, that we can trust? Because trust is a feeling, and that's the same with tech, and it's the same with policy. It's as much about psychology as anything else. So we're identifying the sort of levers and drivers of trust that can be applied and thought about when facilitating the governance of different technologies. And I think it's about two different things. The OECD particularly got some great work telling us that trust in tech, in policy even, and in governance is about two different things. It's about competence and it's about efficiency. So competence, efficiency, capacity, judgment, and then values. So the underlying intentions of how you're directing the governance. And the competence, responsiveness, reliability, accountability. Interestingly, psychologically, we forgive incompetence, although as citizens of the UK, we're not going to forgive so much incompetence for very longer. But the values, the underpinning values of the governance is where we really actually decide whether or not to base our trust. And there's four really important aspects of that. Respect, and that's the most important thing. As citizens, are we being respected? And is this technology fair? It's already inculcated in law, but in tech directions, is it fair? And is my voice included, my tribe's voice included? And we see that from Brexit to Trump. If the tribe's voice is not included, if they are left behind, both left behind in terms of physical sort of the situation that you're talking about, this is where you end up. We need to be really thinking very carefully about how we direct that. But also an openness to not knowing the answers, an authenticity to not, to being, from a policy point of view, not necessarily trying to do this top-down direction, but actually looking at working with industry, with academia, with citizens as well. And again, to finish really, one of the things that is most important in all of these areas is that as individuals and as policymakers and society, we have this sort of need, psychological need for the way. If only it's going to be this way, then everything will be all right, but it's really not. It's going to be a mess all the time. So there's a great quote from H.L. Mencken: for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear and simple and wrong. So again, we have to really think through, we can only do it as in our own way, in our own world, thinking very carefully about the people part of technology, not the tech, the people, and starting with them.
Thank you very much. What about Europe and governance? What should the European Union, or in your case, in Europe, play in developing the governance we are talking about? People are losing trust in Europe. People are losing, questioning values. How does it come together with what you have been mentioning?
And we were seeing different levels of trust in different tech. So everybody across the world decried the GDPR. And suddenly they're now going, oh, that GDPR, that's actually quite a sensible thing after all. Perhaps we ought to have a look at it again. So I think there is definitely some leadership that Europe is given in different technologies. There is perhaps some inflexibility that needs to be looked at. And I've been doing some work again with WEF on this agile governance, sandboxes, testing different governance regimes, rather than these huge, big instruments that sort of land inflexibly, but that we will have to learn in European countries individually and as the Commission, some more flexibility and some more agility in terms of how we govern, as well as how we develop our technologies.
Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me here today, Ivan. So, I just want to share maybe some perspective from my side as a tech entrepreneur that is participating in this 4.0 industrial revolution, because I think that my business and the industry that we operate in is one of the primary interesting examples of the industrial 4.0 revolution. So our industry is so-called influencer marketing. That means we are working with all the YouTubers, bloggers, Instagrammers, which in some cases would have like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of followers, and each of them acting as basically a little media or sometimes as a large medium as such. And if you think about it, the product is not physical at all. It cannot be touched. It's living somewhere in the cloud, yet they are having a real impact of the people's life. They are inspiring them, they are entertaining them, educating them on a daily basis. And my business, Lafluence also, we are building technologies that allows brands and agencies to basically connect with the influencers, make the campaigns more efficient, make the reporting more efficient. And the business itself is built by the products of Industrial Revolution 4.0. I was scouting it the other day, and I think we have something on the order of 20 to 30 online tech tools that allows us to be more efficient. So everything from emails, documents, legal, finance, of course, all the tech things, all the way to internal productivity, I can get as a puzzle piece that I can just plug and play with, and I pay on a per-use basis. So, and also nowadays, the artificial intelligence, for example, is something that I can just buy as a software as a service thing, kind of. So, if, for example, I get a sample of some pictures of the audience, of the followers, I can just send it to some service, and I will get in a real-time back a response of if the person on the picture is a male or female, if they are in their 20s or 30s, if they are happy or not happy, with surprising accuracy. And this is something that I pay just few cents for example, yeah. And so the ability to start a new business in this Industrial 4.0 of the revolution I think has never been easier, because most of the things that you would need are there as a service, and you just pay a couple of cents or per usage. Like X years ago, you would have to pay millions of dollars just for the servers. Now you pay per second of the server time, or you pay per gigabyte, and so on and so forth. So it has, I think, never been easier. And in terms of our region, I think the tech talent here is really, really good. So I think we are ready to participate in the 4.0 economy. I think what we are missing, though, sometimes is, I think, at least in initial stage, from my perspective, it was hard to get funding. So that was one thing that I felt we were kind of missing. Now that we progress, it's getting increasingly easier. And also the talent, we have a lot of strong tech talent, but what we are missing compared to, let's say, some European, some American developed startup markets like Silicon Valley and so on and so forth, is the ability to take the product to the market and actually the business part as well. Mm-hmm. And in terms of society impact, I think actually influencer marketing as such is a great example of how something that was allowed by Industrial Revolution 4.0, thanks to the fact that everybody has a mobile phone and they can start creating content right away, is a great example of the impact on the society. I mean, in US, I think there was a research that top 5 most popular people for US teens are actually YouTubers, not celebrities, not some Hollywood stars, actually YouTubers. And those people are influencing, your kids or your future kids. And so that has a real impact. And of course, there are some threats and weaknesses, because the way the creators are incentivized to create a content that is entertaining and engaging, not necessarily most, let's say, culturally enriching. But on the flip side, I think it's a great thing, because we allow people to have or I think influencer marketing is a great example of freedom of speech and expression and things like that we never had at this extent before. So overall, I'm very positive about influencer, the Industrial Revolution 4.0 and the impact it's going to have on the society. I think it can make us have a happier and more productive life. I think we just have to, remember, once we get more and more computers into our life that connects us, the values that makes us fundamentally human. That's something we cannot forget. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Peter, you have looked at your website, and you are saying that on the website that you need about 500 euros to start a new business. 5,000 crowns.
5,000 crowns to start working with online influencers, yeah. That
exactly.
Is true.
That's what I mean. And you said also indirectly, and you are saying here that it's never been easier to start new business thanks to all the Industrial Revolution products. So it eases this. Opposite that, obviously we have the problem of the misuse of social media, misuse of data, to spread misleading political and other messages. How does it go together? How do you see the pros and the cons and the danger that these two things will clash?
That's definitely one of the things that can be a weakness of the Industrial Revolution, that it's also never been probably easier to spread a message that is misleading. But I think that's always been here. It's just that the media has changed, right? I mean, the political propaganda was here always. Just, now it's not print, now it's not, TV, now it's it can move towards social media, and all the advantage that it has, the ability to target people very well, is also in this case a disadvantage. So I think it comes back to the education as well, very much so, because I think fundamentally people, or at least the way I operate, is that if I see something as a thing that's going to influence my thinking, I'm going to check the fact, and people just take things that they hear as a given, and that comes probably go to some basic education. I mean, I wouldn't just trust something that is completely different of my sanity check of how the world operates, and I think this comes back to the education itself, and the fact that the social media just allows it to make it easier and to target people better is not changing the fact that people just believe whatever is being sent to them, and whether that's through print or through TV or through social, that doesn't matter. So, yeah, that's my perspective. You just have to have people to think on their own, and that comes back to the basic education or the parenthood.
Thank you very much, Adela.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adela, and I will correct Ivo a little bit. I don't work that much with automotive because I work in innovation in Slovakia, and those two things don't come together that much, unfortunately. And that is the point that I decided to make for the introductory remark. I will start with a story. I was in Israel a couple of weeks ago, and there was a father of Israeli innovation called Yossi Vardi. It's an 80-year-old guy, so he can be frank already with you. And when we introduced to each other, and I said that I'm from Slovakia, and he was like, you're the country that puts together cars. And I was like, I froze a little bit, but I had nothing else to say than, yes, we are the country that puts together a lot of cars. And unfortunately, we only put them together. Slovakia, even though we have the highest per capita car production in the world, we produce something around 1 million cars per year, which makes us the largest per capita producer. We haven't managed to embrace innovation and create clusters and hubs that would work together with the manufacturers and with the plants, and would create innovation in automotive and mobility sectors. On the other hand, Israel, that produces literally 0 cars per year, is a home to majority of mobility and automotive tech startups and businesses. And when we were talking with Yossi about this, we discussed what distinguishes the countries that are able to leverage the potential of innovation in a particular sector from the countries that then put pieces together and become basically a big plant, manufacturing plant for any sector. And what we came up with, or what I believe also from the experience in Slovakia, is true, and what distinguishes these two types of countries are two things, and we've touched upon them quite a lot already in the previous speeches. The first thing is adaptability. Adaptability, especially in the educational sector, adaptability of talent and of workforce. That is something that, especially in Europe, and especially in continental Europe, it's still governments that hold the power to influence the way education directs. Education and ability to adapt in people is also very, very strongly connected to the skills that we teach. Of course, it's going to be the hard skills that are going to be very important, but also the soft skills. And for example, things like critical thinking, when we think about fact-checking, it's critical thinking. When we talk about becoming or getting and giving constructive feedback. That's something that we don't work that much in schools with kids. So adaptability is one thing, and then the second thing is predictability. Predictability from the point of view of governments, especially, and from the point of view of states. We often talk about data being the new currency or being the new power that fosters innovation. But data knows no borders. That is what they always say. But in the era of data being able to, and companies that work with data being able to shift from one market to another much faster than it was before because of the supply chains that don't play such an important role anymore, it's much more important for businesses to have or to be in a country that has favorable entrepreneurial environment, that favors and regulates in a very smart way, that doesn't diminish innovation potential, and that is predictable. So the governments don't change their minds from year one to year two very fast, and don't experiment with the businesses. They really regulate market failures, and they regulate them in a way that doesn't hinder innovation. So adaptability and predictability are the 2 points and the 2 things that, from my point of view, distinguish the countries that will be successful from the countries that will lag behind and stay the ones who put things together, as we do currently in Slovakia. And what we are working with and working on is exactly becoming something else from the put-togetherers to the innovators. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. SAPI is the largest innovation alliance in Slovakia. And when we have been talking before, we have been discussing the European Innovation Scoreboard, where Slovakia is in the 3rd group. The Czech Republic is also in the 3rd group, and in the 1st group from the countries that joined in 2004, the EU. The only countries there is Slovenia. Even Estonia is not there, and I don't understand how is it put together. What should you do? What do you need to get up to move to the top innovators? What would Slovakia need? So you are not just putting together the cars, but you are also developing them. So the self-driving cars will be partly at least developed in Slovakia. What do you need for that?
That's a very tough question, actually. But I believe that the education, especially in Slovakia, is key to it, because we've been dropping quite significantly in PISA scoreboards in the last couple of years in Slovakia. So that is something that needs to be addressed. And then I believe that majority of post-communist countries, that's maybe the reason why we don't really appear in the top innovators. The majority of the post-communist countries still lack more general positive approach towards entrepreneurship and towards being able to fail as well. So that is something that we don't have and that we need to develop. But that is not something that can be done in a blink of an eye. And yes, we as SAPI, we are kind of an industry body that represents digital and innovation economy and companies in Slovakia. And majority of them are ICT. And that's due to the fact that ICT is not very capital savvy. So you don't need that much to start an ICT startup. You need much more if you want to create something in the medical technology or in IoT. You need really in infrastructure that is much more capital savvy. So that's why ICT is not is a field that thrives in Slovakia and not other areas.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the short presentations and for the already discussion. Do you have any questions to each other? Do you have any comments to what you have said, Kalle?
Just one. When I spoke before about, let's say, this universities and education over there, then of course I meant all the spectrum, and I would just quote Enrico Moretti, who's a researcher and professor in in Berkeley University in California, and he's written a book, New Geography of Jobs. I'd suggest to read that. And it says that every job in high-tech sector creates 5 additional jobs to other sectors. So basically it means that the more we focus on the higher added value, the more jobs will be created. And even for those who are not ready to change so fast, there'll be an opportunity. And the main idea, again, for the decision makers and politicians would be to, not to draw too high expectations so that everybody will be a startup billionaire, but there is an opportunity to be there and nobody's left behind. And if we put all these things together, this would be an excellent change in the mindset in a way that will have to protect everybody from getting hurt. You can put it in a more progressive way.
Thank you very much. We will come back to it in a moment in the questions which are already on the subject. Jarko?
I have had just one remark related to what Adela said, because I liked it very much. According to our research, which was done globally, as I said, 60% of the jobs where the generation zero will be working in 3 to 5 next years are not known yet. They doesn't exist. So this is related as well to what you said. We don't know what the future will be. We have to align with the coming technologies, but it will bring a lot of things which are not at all now something we know.
When you think about it, 5 years ago, YouTubers or influencers on Instagram, there were none. So,
yeah.
And those years ago, we didn't have iPhone, so
as well.
That's right. The progress is going really fast. Yeah. True. Very much true.
Okay, if there are no...
I have one question,
Peter?
actually. You were talking about this lifetime education and upskilling. From my perspective, I always thought this is a responsibility of the companies that you join. And you're putting it back to the education system of government, based on what I understand. So what are your thoughts there? Because my understanding was it just gives you the starting ground, you join a great company, and they will help you through their education system to develop, and you continue to educate throughout the lifetime. At least that was my experience. So in Google or other companies I was part of. So I'm not sure what's your thought here, whether the companies could actually take this part and they would be upskilling the labor, and you don't need,
Yeah, I didn't mean it as a state system, but again, talking about the expectations. So far, younger generation still in Estonia, it's a huge issue. The expectations are so high. If you go to university, you expect that the salary is at least 3 times average if you finish the university. So this is something that has gone wrong some years ago, or I don't know how many years ago. But let's say not all the things are good in Estonia. So basically, what I meant was that we don't need to waste taxpayers' money on educating somebody for the specific need, let's say, skill set. For the company who has the very specific skill set, they could do it. And we could just, let's say, they could do it in their own way and direction, and we could add some value with some aspects, but not take the responsibility in having, let's say, universities and education available for everybody who wants to go there. So basically, this education, which is for everybody, must be until the 12th grade, and the quality should be almost the same like baccalaureate at the moment. So we don't have so many years to waste in human beings' life than we are doing it at the moment. So 12 years plus 5 years plus maybe then an additional master degree or something else. Can you imagine it? In terms of the speed of the development of technology. So
So you would have people going to the workforce sooner, but keep educating him throughout the lifetime? Is that the model? Or?
This is the model. It's education as a lifestyle. So basically, that should be that. otherwise we are wasting the public money and then we are wasting the time for the people. And I just spoke before with Adela. Germany has this system for vocational training, and it works very well. The unemployment rate in youth is, or the, let's say, youth unemployment is really low. So basically, you choose the profession that you would like to have for the next 5 or 10 years, and then the employer will choose the right place to provide you the education. And then this is in cooperation with the other schools, with the other universities, institutes, so on and so on. Specifically, let's say, focused on the skill set you need.
Hilary, you have been...
No, I'm happy to hear what the audience have got to say.
I want to go to the audience also. Unless there are burning questions to each other, I would like to go to the audience. What is on everybody's mind, and what has been already said, is the question of employment. I think Kalle, in a certain way, have answered that when you said every high-tech job creates 5 jobs down the line, but people are still worrying about their jobs. And the question is, how should we prevent a drastic rise in unemployment due to Revolution 4.0? Why don't you have a first go at it? Are we going to have a drastic rise in unemployment? Are we afraid of something that is in fact not going to happen?
Before the panel, I intentionally went for a numbers hunt in order not to speak just from my mind. And the World Economic Forum actually had a report on how many jobs will be lost and how many jobs will be created. And they say that around 75 million jobs will be lost, but around 135 million jobs will be created due to the new technologies. So, and when I think about it, I would not want to. If you think about all the industrial revolutions that have already taken place, I would not want to be a worker before the steam engine was created, or if you take it in like the example that is more recent, then I wouldn't want to be an accountant before Excel was around. So I think that with AI and all the tools that are connected to the new technologies, we will just have different way of interaction with the technologies. That doesn't mean that the workers from the plants will lose their jobs completely and will have to become coders. That's not what is going to happen. And then they will just move one way or one step up in the whole ladder. And they will have to reskill themselves a little bit. There's also one point that is being quite missed in the discussion, and that is it's not 100% of a particular job that is going to be lost. It's in each and every job. What is estimated is around 20 to 30% maximum is to be automated, or not maximum, but average. 20 to 30% in manufacturing jobs are to be automated, and the rest of the job will remain the same, or the rest of the job description. So the jobs will be merged. Some people will lose their jobs. The danger is that it's going to be the low-skilled people who have stronger, or it's much harder for them to adjust. But I don't believe that we will, from day 1 to day 2, lose 75 million jobs, point. And the people will be lost in desert. So that's my point of view, but I'm also very optimistic as well.
Jarka?
I'm very optimistic as well, and I just will add to this, because this is my topic all the time. It's not so scary how is it presented now, but there may be in some regions, in some places, short period of massive lays off of people. There may be some small crisis around, and there is nobody from government side, as I see in Czech and Slovakia as well. I don't know how is it in Europe, if the situation is better, talking about it and preparing programs or something to support those people. We are talking especially about low-skilled people losing their jobs because of robotization, who will not be able to reskill quickly. Some of them will never be able to do it. So where is the social network which will help them to continue to live with dignity? And how we will solve it, we don't know yet. But out of this catastrophic scenario, I would like to add something which was more or less said by all my colleagues in this panel, but let me just underline it. The most important thing for the jobs in the future is how people will be able to develop their soft skills. Everything in the future will be about, future is now, just to make sure we understand each other, how we will be able to change our skills, to reskill, to go through ongoing learning, all the active period of life we will be living. This is the crucial question. We are talking about so-called learnability, ability of people to be able to adapt to new conditions, new demand. And this will be I think, the magic point.
Peter, then Hilary and Kalle. Short remarks, please.
Okay. So I'm a huge technological optimist, obviously. So I think in the long term, there won't be the problem of people not having ability to live from. People are super creative in finding new ways and endeavors. Once one job ends, people used to have like 70% of them in agriculture used to be. Now it's maybe like 3%, and you have new jobs like YouTubers or psychologists for your dog and things like that. So I think we will come up with something that people will be able to be creative about and develop. I think there could be short-term effect, like in the switching between jobs. It could be a couple of years for some people which are having these lower skill jobs that they might have some actual problems. Actually, in the long term, what I think could be the thing that I'm worried about is once we get more and more people
the mic, please.
Yeah, if more and more people actually... okay.
Could be the books.
Could be the books.
Yeah, like
better now?
Yeah, just keep it.
Okay. Sorry for that. So I think the long-term challenge that actually might be, once the artificial intelligence will take over most of the basic needs that we have, that means the food, the housing, and everything else, and that will be provided almost for free, what will people do, right? I mean, most of the people derive meaning from their work. I think the challenge eventually, like down the road, 50 years from now, if you get all of that covered and you don't have to move your finger, where did you get your meaning of life from? And actually, that's something I'm worried about. Like, people might be unhappy. Like, what do you do? I mean, you don't have to go anywhere.
Nothing.
That's something, Yeah.
Hilary?
So there's lots to say, but I'm going to pick up just on this idea of valuing the soft skills. Because what we see at the moment is the people who use the soft skills, the caring professions, the nurses, the care home people, they are the least respected people in society. And these are the people we would hope to be the most respected people in society. These are the people who are looking after us and caring for us and our children. So I question too, this, I hear a lot, we need to look after the soft skills. Well, you're not doing it so far. So what has to change for policymakers to stop this thrall about technology and start to value the soft skills? Because one of the things it needs is a really purposeful attempt and understanding to change behaviours and change the view. And actually, it is the view of policymakers. I don't mean to criticise the gentleman this morning that says, you've got a great time, you're not even poor. It doesn't feel like that. It feels very overwhelming and very frightening. All you've read about is the robots are coming. Nobody's got any answers. Nobody's giving you any help. So I think, again, back to this thinking about people, what they're doing, what they're thinking about, and how we can find a way of valuing these soft skills. And not just soft skills, but, there is music and the arts, and, we don't all tech here. There are other things in the world than technology. Although they're going to be influenced by that, we need to value that. Universities might have some role to play in that, some role to play in critical thinking skills to hold tech to account. That's what universities are for. So there's lots of other things out there, rather than just this, universities and everything being slave to the machine.
Thank you very much, Kalle.
Yes, Few remarks. One from my own experience. So I'm also a chairman of elected council of one suburb of Tallinn, which is, 20,000 people or something like that. And there is 70 people working in the municipality. And we did study to find out what kind of procedures could be replaced with AI and basically machine. Even the applications for some let's say support, and that we replaced it with chatbots and so. And I gathered the meeting and said that please let's cooperate in finding the best way to change the stupid job with a robot. But don't be afraid, none of you will lose a job, because currently we need more people, but we can give a meaning for the job that you are doing every day. So basically, there were many HR people who are just, let's say, filling the applications which are done on paper, and they are let's say doing it manually and putting it to Excel. So this is the most important message. And nobody will be left behind. Nobody will lose the job, but the job will be different. So this could be the let's say message by the leaders and decision makers. But just one last thing by me too, which I should have said in the beginning, is that the development of technology isn't the most important topic in the world at the moment. So the most important topic in the world is climate change and the increase of the population outside European Union and the United States. So this is the thing that influences all the policies in EU, in states, and in other continents as well. And if we don't take the leadership here and don't find a solution, a long-term solution over here, then there is no point to talk about the principle that nobody is left behind, because there is no time for any politician to deal with it. Everybody is dealing with migration crisis and this radicalism which is rising in all of the member states, basically. So this is something that we must focus on, and I really hope that the new European Commission and the European Parliament will take the lead in helping Africa and in helping other continents, instead of making ourselves richer and ourselves better, because we will get better anyway. We have invested so much in human capital, so we'll create the value anyway. But in these 54 countries, there is so much to do. The basic stuff. In the first level of wealth, there is investments to education system, and this is not the education system that I was talking about before. This is the first and fourth grade education and so on. So this will influence everything during the next 10 years, and it could shadow the positive impact of the development of technology, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, and maybe we'll come back to it in a moment. Many of the things that we were saying, or you were saying, apply not only for the European society, apply globally. This is happening everywhere. And the question from the audience is, do we have, as European society, in this race towards, let's call it Industry 4.0, the changes we see, do we have any advantages over the other competitors, the United States, China, very soon India, and others? What are the specifics that the European society has, if any, that would give us an advantage in this race, if you want, in this adaptation to the Industry 4.0 over the others? Or are we lagging behind? Why don't we start with you, Peter?
Well, I don't think we have any.
We don't have any?
No.
Why?
Well, because of the whole ecosystem hubs, Like if you look at the Silicon Valley, there is already so much capital, so much talent. You have Stanford, you have all these great schools. like just as the other month, there was this World Cup summit that we also were part of as a top startups here from the region. And the investors from the Valley came in, and one of the questions was like, why don't you invest outside of Silicon Valley? And they're saying like, well, if you go fishing, you fish where all the fishes are, and the concentration is so much higher there. So they just don't even go elsewhere. So like, I mean, that you just have these innovation hubs. So I think that would have to change. And then is the, if you just look at the standard distribution, if you have like so many more, it's also the population game. Like China, it's a population game, right? If you have a top certain percentage of people that will be doing something super high value add and innovative, then if you do that out of 1 billion, it's a different math than if you do it out of 5 million people in Slovakia or 10 million in Czech Republic. So, well, but I'm not an expert on this topic, so maybe somebody else knows more what we could do. I think it could be some specific things. I think a lot of great innovation come from the region. I think Skype come from the region of the Latvia or like Latvic states, and so there are a lot of like great companies here. Also, some global antivirus companies. So we have examples of like software. So there are some things that could come from this region, but I think in general the innovation I think will be mass produced somewhere else probably. That's just my perspective.
Hilary?
I know you're wanting Mariana Mazzucato on the panel and she couldn't come. And she has written a book called The Entrepreneurial State, and she says that we underestimate how important the infrastructure, the funding from the state is in terms of catalyzing innovation, and there would be no Apple without DARPA and all of that sort of thing. So I think one of the things that we have in Europe, we have both the capacity through the framework programs and quite a lot of central funding money to catalyze this mission-driven that I know the Commission is very keen on. But what you've also got is the ability to collaborate across countries. And I think that in itself is a real strength that we don't make the most of. And I think perhaps we could make the most of with the universities, but also not the universities on their own. I mean, really, they drive me mad. So I'm being positive and negative. I spend a lot of time there. But in these new multi-collaborative projects, and I think we do that better than anyone else.
I do agree.
Yes.
I do agree. Thanks for saying this. I truly believe that European Union is a fantastic project which has a lot of opportunities and a lot of potential we are not using right now. That's it.
Thank you, Adela.
We do have some advantages, of course, but the main disadvantage is that even though we present ourselves as a one market, we're not a truly European single market, especially not in services, and very, very slightly in the area of digital. So you have, when you want to enter, as a Spotify example that was mentioned, Spotify had to leave Europe to scale to the US, and only then, after being able to grow in the US on a large market, they returned back to Europe because they had to cope with 28 different legislative procedures and frameworks. And that is something that we cannot lie to ourselves that we are a single market, because we're not, especially in the area of innovation and technology. So that is a huge disadvantage that we have. We were able to, very strongly cooperate in the 90s on creating single market, especially for products. We haven't been able to complete it in the area of services, and we're completely lagging behind in the area of digital. So that is a huge disadvantage that we have in the upcoming revolution.
Thanks a lot, Kalle.
I would underline one advantage, which is the, let's say, structure itself, which has proven that it can be cooperative, and I would underline the understanding of human dignity and human rights, which is probably the biggest value that we have in terms of, let's say, in this field that we are discussing at the moment. So because, I mean, if we look at China and their companies and the speed of their development. And if we spend time on discussing too much what could and how could we enable the technology in our 27 or 28 markets, then I think that the Chinese competitiveness would be much higher already, and there is not too many things to decide on after that, because, I mean, still, let's come to that in every 13 years, there will be an additional billion population in the world, and the European Union is still 500 million. And so basically, in every 13 years, there will be 2 European Unions added in the world. So again, I mean, the stuff is happening elsewhere, and we should finally understand it. So basically, we should work with the same efficiency like there was a EU Council, I think, in the summer of 2016, probably, when they found a solution for the Greece debt crisis during maybe 48 hours, and they found 90 billion to help Greece economy. So basically, I mean, this was something that the European leaders, where European leaders showed that there is a leadership, we can decide all together. But if we look at the migration crisis, if we look at, let's say, the same fragmentation issue which Adela mentioned, I mean, we estimate that Estonia saves 2% of GDP each year by doing things digitally. So let's take the digital single market only. If we could save 2% of GDP and add value to the services, I mean, what could it be? What could we do with this additional 5% of GDP or something like that with in our economy? But this is only matter of decision. It's not about technology. It's not about money. It's just the decision. Will we do it or will we not do it? And that's basically it.
Thank you very much, Adela.
I just wanted to add that on a more positive note, it's not only negative, because I was quite frank. There is one area where we could be leaders if we are careful and smart, and that's regulatory affairs. And I believe setting up a new approach towards competition policy on the EU level. And that is something that where we could play a very strong role also globally.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience that you didn't have the possibility to put on the Slido? No, then I go, yes, do I have a microphone there? Thank you.
Hello, does it work?
It should be working.
Okay, now you can hear me? Okay. Hello, I'm Lukas Bornski from the Commission. Thank you from the European Commission. Thank you for the very interesting discussion. I think there have been so many issues that you've commented on that I would also like to maybe discuss or comment. But then just one thing which I think was very interesting, the reform of education. I mean, it's a very complex thing. Education systems are very complex. We have so many different education systems across Europe. And just one very minor point. So when we agree that we will have like very short education, like the period of education will be shorter, and we will give very specific set of skills to these people just to train them for a job. How is it going to be for these people later on when maybe they'll have some transitions in their careers and they'll have to change? I mean, they have to do some reskilling, upskilling to change their jobs and professions. Who is going to do it? Is it going to be against the state, the policymakers, the European Union, or someone, or is it going to be the company who will do this upskilling? Probably not, because we have individuals and they have to find new opportunities and career paths. So just maybe a bit more critical remark on this educational reform. Thank you.
Don't you start?
I think it was in a study done by World Economic Forum, which said, and I quoted that before, that 80% of the future workforce will be reskilled or upskilled or educated in the companies. So basically it's 80%. and the additional 20, I mean, it could be a combination as well, but the principle is that there can't be an expectation on the enterprises that state will give them the perfect fit in terms of labor. So it should be their duty, and the result is so much better if it's this way. Of course, there is this other skills that are needed. It's said that if you hire the skill set, but if you fire the personalities. So basically, I mean, still during these 12 or 14 years, they'll have to learn how to be a good human being and a team player and work in a team consisting different languages, different cultural backgrounds, and so on and so on. So it will be very diverse in the future, and this is something that I think that our universities hasn't understood yet, especially in the smaller European Union countries.
Thank you very much. You wanted to say, Hilary?
Please go ahead.
No, Hilary, go ahead.
I like that about the skill set. One of the things we keep saying is we need critical thinking and we need people who are challenging. But one of the things is we don't like being challenged. You know, I get invited to do critical thinking, you know, to be the critical friend, and they only want the friend bit. They don't really want the critical bit. So one of the things we also need to think about is how we actually deal with this diversity, these diverse teams, because it's very, very difficult to deal with. And one of the things we talk about a lot is about how we need to listen to different voices. Well, actually, we can't listen to the voice of the opinion of the person whose opinion we don't value. That's not going to happen. So we need to have a different sort of skill set among the leaders who are rather stuck in the past, as well as those future people who are going to be part of that.
Sorry. Yes, and I just will align with what you just said. Leaders means not only leaders in the companies, but as well governments. Because to answer your question, my opinion is that it has to be collaboration between companies, societies, and individuals. And there must be leaders who will be talking about it, clearly saying what is happening, how we will solve it, and what will happen next.
Thank you very much. We have 3 minutes to go. 30 seconds each for closing remarks on the top questions that we have, European effects on the European society, and what we have heard now. Adela.
30 seconds. Okay, startups have this motto that says "move fast and break things," and I think we need to move carefully and repair them instead. That's my 30 seconds.
Yeah, as I said, I'm super optimistic about the future. Technological-wise, I just hope that the values will be kept as we discussed as the part of it. And I think a lot of these issues that we are talking about, whether it's education or other things, could be solved actually by technology. So for me, actually, the challenge that I see further along is how do we going to survive this age of abundance that we are entering, I think.
Okay. I would say I don't want Silicon Valley's values running the world, so I think we need to stand up for our own values, start with the problems being solved, and start with the people, and be purposeful about how the people and the technologies can work together.
The robot takes tasks, not the jobs, and technology is here to serve us, humans.
Thank you very much. Kalle?
I will end up with a quote by Roy Amara, who has said that we keep overestimating the influence of the development of technology and underestimate it in a long term. So in a short term, we are overestimating the solutions, and in a long term, underestimating. So the most important thing is to start now and choose the direction, because otherwise we'll be left behind.
Thank you very much. If I look at what has been said, and I pick up some words that have been turning around, I think the first one is education. I think that's there's no doubt about it. Interesting remark from Kalle, a proposition that we should have expiration date for education. So I wonder if I should go back to university again. I think to have 1 weekend in a month where you would go and have the possibility to educate yourself to new skill. It goes in line with the Danish philosopher Grundtvig, who was saying that education should be free and accessible to everybody throughout your whole life. So you can in fact do this at any age, provided in his case it was above 18. We have to be ready to change. There will be changes, and people have to be ready for it. And trust and governance are going to be extremely important. I think what is needed also is the predictability, what you have been saying. And it's predictability that comes from, in a certain way, from a cooperation, I believe, between the government and the business community. Because the business community needs the predictability. We cannot have changes. The business community cannot live in a world where the changes are coming every day and the rules are changing. Competition law, I think, a very interesting aspect, and something where the EU should play an important role. There are obviously roles for the EU to play, and there are roles for the member states, the regions, and everybody else. Part of it will come from the top down, and part of it will come from bottom down. I think that we didn't speak enough about leaders. I think that we need leadership. It has been mentioned at the end. I wanted to ask you the question, but unfortunately we run out of time. But if we don't have people who will be and that's the same in politics. That's the same in the European Union. We have a lack of leadership. I'm not convinced. I'm not sure that we have lack of leadership in this case, in the technology and other areas. I think we have very able people. I think that everybody was very optimistic about the jobs, about what the most of the people are pessimistic. The trade unions, they ring the bell all the time. And what has been said, one high-tech job creates 5 down the line. And I don't think there has been anybody here on the panel, unless I didn't pay attention, that would say the Industry 4.0 will mean loss of jobs. So thank you very much. Thank you. Give us big hand to our panelists, and thanks a lot.